Well, good morning, Debbie. This is Craig Haines, and this is going to be our webinar on workforce math. Now, this is aimed at any company or organization that is interested in the technical workforce, because as we all know today, the economy is changing rapidly, and more jobs now are becoming technical in nature as we install automation and robots and all sorts of machinery in our manufacturing facilities and really in all of our facilities. And so the question really that people face today is, how do we get our employees and our future employees ready for the workforce? And one of the things that I believe is a very critical ingredient for that is what we call workforce math. Now, what I'd like to do in this webinar that we're recording is, first of all, tell you about the benefits of workforce math. And then after I've done that, I want to tell you where it came from, the origin, so you'll see why it's evolved. I believe this is a very unique product that we have. I'm not aware of anything like it anywhere. And then after we've told you what the benefits are and where it comes from, then I want to tell you about specifically how this program can work for a company or an organization that's interested in preparing workers for the modern workforce. Clear enough, Debbie?
Yes, thank you.
Now, the first thing I want to do is I simply want to tell you what the benefits of workforce math are. So I've got a PDF here, and we can share all this with you. The first question is, if you have an employee or a potential employee, does that employee have the aptitude, the ability to learn technical subjects? That's a question you've got to ask yourself. And my experience has been that if you take all of the people out there, all adults, about 80% do. And but you can't tell that necessarily without some sort of a testing mechanism. And if they go through the workforce math, I can absolutely guarantee you that they've got the aptitude and the ability to learn technical subjects. Now, having the aptitude and the ability to learn technical subjects is fine and dandy, but then what they also need in this modern world is they need the appropriate mathematics background to learn them, because math is really like a second language. You know that people have to have a certain literacy ability to read directions and to communicate with everybody involved, but you don't have to read Shakespeare. You don't have to read, you don't have to have a huge vocabulary or understand sophisticated grammatical rules to have adequate literacy for the technical workforce, but you just have to be literate at a certain level. Well, math's the same way. You need to have a certain amount of mathematics background if you're going to learn technical subjects, if you're going to learn how to read documentation and all of that sort of thing. And so if you go through this certification program, our workforce math program, you will have the background. So what an employer will know if a person has gone through this program is, A, that person does have the ability and the aptitude to learn technical subjects, not a problem. And secondly, and probably equally important, they have the appropriate math background. And I must tell you that very, very few high school graduates in the United States today have the appropriate math background. And that's a very complicated subject of why that is, but it is just a fact of life. And a lot of people are very well aware of that. So those are the two major benefits you're going to get. Is that clear, Debbie?
It is, yes.
Now, what I want to do is, Workforce Math has a website with lots of information on it, but I want to take you to a special page, workforcemath.com/10. And what we get asked all the time by companies is, well, let's say we put our employees or our future employees through this program. What are the consequences? Well, the facts are there's 10 consequences, and I want to review those with you quickly. First of all, the first thing we're going to teach them in workforce math is the mastery of using a scientific calculator to do calculations. Nobody today does calculation with pencil and paper. That's obsolete. You don't use slide rules. You don't use pencil and paper. You don't use log table. You use a scientific calculator. We use the TI-30XA, which is an excellent scientific calculator. It costs less than $10. And once you learn to use that calculator, you can easily then transfer that skill to just about any other calculator. Secondly, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, there's a wonderful tool today called Wolfram Alpha. It's been available to the world since 2009, and that lets you do all sorts of things. Pardon me, Debbie. Wolfram Alpha lets you do all sorts of things, and it saves an immense amount of time and lets you solve problems that you can't do even with a calculator. And so we introduce the student to the beginning use of Wolfram Alpha. Now, what about math? What's the math they need to know? Well, in addition to understanding the number system and how to use arithmetic calculation with a calculator, you need to know a certain amount of practical algebra and a certain amount of practical geometry. Now, this is a small fraction of what's taught in a typical high school today. In fact, a lot of students have done poorly in high school math because there's so much stuff in it that is irrelevant and difficult that they don't need. So we teach just the algebra and the geometry that you need for the technical workforce. Now, I'm not talking engineering now in science. I'm talking about a non-professional technical workforce. On top of basic algebra and geometry, you have to deal with angles a lot of times and triangles. And to do that, you need basic trigonometry. So that's the fourth thing we teach. So once a student has gone through the workforce math, they will know how to do calculations with a scientific calculator. They'll know how to use Wolfram Alpha to do a lot of different amazing things. They'll understand practical algebra and geometry and even trigonometry. And that's what they're going to learn. And that's what the employer wants to know. Does this worker have this capability? And until the worker gets this capability, or at least a good part of it, they're really not ready to take a lot of the training you're going to be giving them on technical things. Now, there's even more subtle things. What you're going to be doing with any worker that goes through this is you're going to be improving their analytical skills. They need these skills when they're troubleshooting and solving practical problems. And learning practical math, not only does it give you the tools, it gives you the analytical skill to do it. So you're learning, you're honing your skills to do that. Another very important thing, number 6, is you can enhance the ability to understand technical documentation. A lot of workers today have to learn technical documents on how to operate a machine or how a certain process works. And the documentation assumes they know the math. They're not going to stop teaching the math. So if they don't know the math, they can't understand the documentation. It's a huge problem today that industry has. And the way around it then, of course, is the proper math. So technical documentation. Now, another thing that happens today, most companies, when they hire technical workers, are going to train them on all sorts of proprietary things. Debbie, today, every company today is installing special equipment. We call it robotics, let's say, or CNCs and PLC equipment, all sorts of equipment, and special processes involved. And they have to train their workers on how to use that equipment. That's technical training they're giving internally. It's usually very proprietary, very confidential. Well, if the worker doesn't have the proper math background and the ability, they can't learn that technical stuff. So again, this gets them ready for that. Now, the truth of the matter is, from an employer's viewpoint, this is going to screen out people that really don't have the ability to learn these technical things. One of the worst things that can happen for an employer today is to put a worker that might have a great attitude and really want to work and all that into a technical position that they don't have the ability for. And that can be a disaster, because one mistake today in industry can cost a tremendous amount of money. Downtime is a very expensive thing, and mistakes are very costly. So what you're really doing by putting a person through this workforce math and certifying their abilities is you're going to know that you've got people that can do the job. And that's really quite important. In fact, a lot of times, a lot of the tests that the military gives and that employers give to applicants are math tests. They want to know, because if a person can't pass the math, they figure, well, they probably can't learn what I've got to do. In fact, this keeps a lot of people out of the workforce today, the inability to pass these tests. I will tell you this, if a worker, a person, man or woman, has gone through the workforce math, they'll be able to pass all these tests that are used to screen people out. Now, another thing that's very intangible is this motivates workers, because a lot of workers today are afraid of math. They've had a bad experience with it. They don't understand it very well. They know it, but they don't want to admit it, obviously. Who wants to admit it? And once they go through this, they say, oh, I can do this. We've trained thousands of workers, and what we find is a high percentage of them come to us to say, oh, I didn't know I could do this. I didn't know math could be this easy. Well, it's only easy because we're teaching them the right math with the right pedagogy. And that's why it's easy. And they're amazed by it. In fact, a lot of times they'll say, why didn't somebody teach me this 20 years ago? Why didn't I learn this in high school? A common comment we've got, I've had people go through this program and say, I learned more math in here in 2 or 3 days than I learned in all of high school. That's a common comment. Now, I hate to be critical of the high schools, and it's really a problem with systemic math education today, and I don't want to get into that on this video, but I have a book I'll tell you about later where I discuss that in detail in a book you can read. So ultimately, what the company cares about is you're improving your workers' productivity and you're reducing errors. Quality and productivity are going up, errors are going down. And let me tell you, in modern industry today, that has a huge impact on the bottom line. One error today can cost a ton of money. Depends on what it is, but it can be extremely, extremely expensive. And so if you can improve your workers' productivity and the quality and reduce errors, that's a huge financial benefit. And that's really ultimately what companies care about, is the bottom line. At least that's what the very top management cares about, is bottom line. And of course, you care about the quality of the product for your consumers. Now, at this point, we're about 10 or 11 minutes into this video. And so if you're watching it and you don't understand or agree with anything that I've told you so far, then you probably don't need to watch it any further, because I've told you the benefits. Now the question is, a reasonable question is, now that I've told you the benefits, is, well, who are you? Why should I believe you? And what can I do to, where did this all come from? So let me tell you, I am Craig Haines. I've been around for a long time. I'm 80 years old in 2019 when I'm making this video. And you go to my website, craighaines.com. And first of all, I have a book on teaching math that explains the problem with the modern math curriculum. And I also have other books that will help you with math. And you can download those, are free PDFs. And then you can come down and you can look at my website and you can see what I've got. And now we do a lot of things. Now, the first thing I'll point out, if you go to Learn, Play, Connect, that's a free website that has tons and tons of stuff on it. And if you're interested in math at all or know anyone that is, send them to that website. We do a lot of training today with homeschoolers, because homeschoolers today have the freedom to do things that are appropriate for their students that the high schools are struggling to do. Obviously, workforce math is what I'm going to talk to you about now, but we also have STEM math. If we have math for people that are going into science and engineering, calculus, differential equations, all of those things. We have something called the supercomputer I'll tell you about in a little while, and altogether we have a 6-tier program aimed at homeschoolers that want to take students that want to go all the way through STEM math. But what I want to focus on today is this workforce math. Now, you might very well ask, okay, that's fine and dandy, but tell me a little bit more about yourself. What's your background? So if you click on my VITA and go to that, you can go here and you can either download a PDF of my VITA or you can watch 2 videos. I won't explain in detail where I'm coming from and where this comes from. I think you have a right to know where this is coming from, who I am, what my background is, and so on. Now, when you download the PDF of my VITA, what you're going to see here is I was born in 1938 in Indiana, Greencastle, Indiana. And this tells about my background, my youth. I studied math at Greencastle High School. Actually, the first 7 years of my life, 6 years of my life, I was in Putnamville, Indiana. I'm a hick from the sticks. And then when I was in high school, my senior year, I took courses at DePaul. That's a school in Greencastle. and I actually started tutoring my fellow students. In fact, I started that way back when I was very young. I had learned something in math, and I would teach it to my fellow students. I started doing that, actually, to be honest about it, at age 5. That's another story. Um, I taught trigonometry at Greencastle High School when I was a senior in high school. Then I graduated. I went to Oberlin College. I majored in both math and English and took lots of other subjects. It was a very liberal arts education. I taught math as a problem-solving instructor there. Then the year after I graduated from Oberlin, I taught a high school in Wakeman, Ohio. And I was able, it was a small country school, I taught all the math, algebra, geometry, trig, senior honors math, even taught chemistry. And that was a wonderful, wonderful year of teaching math. I loved it. My favorite thing of all the things I've done in my life is teaching high school math. I absolutely loved it. After that year, I came back to Greencastle. I taught at DePaul. Dr. Clint Gass, who was my mentor, was going on a sabbatical, and so he wanted me to teach there second semester. And so first semester, I enrolled as a grad student at Indiana University just for the fun of it, to see what it was about. Well, I really liked it, so I went back after that. I spent 4 years there, and I taught math when I was there, and of course I studied math, and I ended up getting a PhD in math in 1966. And my major was a very theoretical subject called algebraic number theory. And believe me, you don't want me to talk much about that. Then after that, I went to Indiana State University in Terre Haute, Indiana, and I taught their most advanced courses in math, topology, functional analysis, things like that. And I did that for 3 years. And then after that, I went to Rose-Hulman, which is an engineering school in Indiana, Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. And I taught the very same theoretical math courses at Rose that I taught at Indiana State. I did that for 4 years. Well, then after 1973, excuse me again, in 1973, I decided to leave academia. Quite frankly, I've always been an adventurer. And so I started several businesses, and I won't bore you with the details on that. But I missed teaching. In 1978, I went back and I taught digital electronics and operational amplifiers at Indiana State University. And the reason I could do that, one of my companies, I developed something called the Haines Dynabrain for the racing industry. I got to meet guys like Dale Earnhardt. He was my biggest customer and that sort of thing. But I came back and I taught that. And then in 1980, I formed a company called Haines Training. Now, that's really where this all came from. If you go to hainestraining.com, and then we changed the name to Learn Maintenance, you'll see here we have a whole bunch of different technical training courses. We trained over the next 3 decades thousands and thousands of technical people for industry, for the military, for public utilities. GM was one of our largest clients. Chrysler was a huge client. Caterpillar, on and on and on. We taught all these. Now, each one of these categories has many workshops in it, so I'll just click on mechanical to show you. These are the workshops that we taught: troubleshooting, industrial rigging, welding, just all sorts of things. And each one of these was an on-site, hands-on program with equipment. Now, here's the thing. 90% of the technicians that came into these programs, and this is people from the military, General Motors, you name it, didn't have the math background they needed for any of these subjects. And so what we did, and what was the secret of our success, is we just teach them enough math that they needed to know. We take time out and do that, then teach them the subject, whether it's hydraulics or pneumatics or electrical, op amps, whatever. And we had, like, I don't know, over 50 courses. And here's the deal. The math you needed in all these different subjects, all these technical subjects, is pretty much the same math. And so what I did then, years later, when technology enabled it, I then went ahead and, I formed a company called Triad Math in 2011. And we began to develop all sorts of math for not only the workforce, but for homeschool, for STEM and everything. So we've got a wide variety of programs. This is our parent company. But our subsidiary company then is Workforce Math Incorporated. And this is really now the math that's needed for industry that I've already told you about. So that's the genesis of where this came from. This just didn't come out of thin air. This did not come out of any high school math book. There's nothing like it out there. We do not use a book. We use notes, custom exercises, and the training is all videos. Now let me show you a little bit about what's involved in that. let me show you, for example, just exactly what we cover in workforce math. Whoops. Let me see if I can bring that up. There it is. Okay. This is the full-blown advanced program. We start out, as I told you earlier, with a calculator. And each one of these lessons is a video. Like for negative numbers, we have a 6-minute video. Then there will be exercises and there will be quizzes. It's like climbing a ladder. You can't move on until you master each one, because otherwise you get lost. I mean, one of the big problems today in math education in a classroom is the kids can't keep up. A lot of them, and once they get behind, it's basically impossible. And the teacher can't do anything about it. This is all self-paced. The student is learning this from videos delivered over the internet online. And even if we have a group of students studying together, they're all doing it individually, and they'll be at different places. And we like to have a coach there to help them, but I'm the teacher. And so every one of these now is a lesson in a video. And the nice thing about videos is the student can pause them, back them up, rewatch them, review them, and all of that. And that's very, very important. And that's what we teach our students. After they learn to use a calculator, we give them what we call pre-algebra. Now, frankly, Debbie, what this is, a lot of students today, even if they're high school graduates, have forgotten some of the rules of arithmetic. So this is basically making sure they understand how to use numbers, square roots, reciprocals, exponents, the rules of multiplication, the distributive law, things of that nature. And again, every one of these is a video with a lesson in it with exercises. Now, if a student already knows one of these topics, they go through it real quick. And they could go through it in just a few minutes. If they don't know the topic, they got to do the exercises, and it can take them time. So different students go at different paces. It's impossible to predict how long any given student's going to take. It depends on their background. Once we've taught them that, then we start into the real math. We do algebra. Now, Debbie, this amazes people. There's only 8 lessons to start with in algebra. Just think of the algebra books today that high schools use. Hundreds of pages long. Not a high percentage of what's in these algebra books today is irrelevant for workforce math. It's all sorts of stuff that you'll never use, you don't need for workforce. This is what you need for the workforce. And students go through this, they find it very easy. In fact, if a student gets through the calculator training and the pre-algebra training, we know they can do this. And their self-esteem goes up. They learn to go, well, I can do that. That's easy. I can do that. Well, that's what they need to know. Then after the algebra, we do geometry. Now, in the beginning, we give them about a dozen lessons here. You'll see in a minute we're going to add more, but this is about how long should something be? What is the area? What is the volume? And how do you apply the algebra with the geometry to solve the problems? Algebra and geometry go together. You have to work them together. In fact, the most important topic in geometry for practical technical math is similar triangles. We'll use that more than any other thing. And we're not proving theorems now. This is in high school, they start out to proving theorems. Well, that's fine. There's a place for that for some students when the time is right, but not in the beginning. So this is teaching them practical stuff, and they love it. And by this time, their self-esteem has gone sky high. They know they can do it. We have some special topics that we teach them. And I won't get into the details on it, but sometimes we're using Wolfram Alpha for this. Sometimes we're just doing other things. These are all important things if you're going to do technical math. Then we go into the advanced. Now, what we do is we add a few more lessons for the calculator, in particular the trig lessons. We do a little more algebra involving trigonometry. We do a little more geometry. We get into a few of the other things like cones and spheres, surfaces and areas. Then we do trigonometry. Now, this is what you need if you're going to be dealing with triangles and angles. And believe it or not, there's only 7, 8 lessons in trigonometry, and they're really easy. In fact, trigonometry is actually somewhat easier than the geometry when you are ready for it, when you build up to it. And then we have some additional special topics. So, Debbie, that's what we cover in the workforce math. And that's what you need to know. Now, you can, you might say, well, you're left out some topics, or who knows? We could customize it if we need to, but this is basically what, if I will tell you this, if a student knows these 76 lessons, there's a total of 76, and most students will go through this in anywhere from 40 to 80 hours, depends on the student. They'll know more math than 95% of all the people out there, all the technicians out there, unless they've gone through this program. and they'll certainly know more math than almost any high school graduate that is not actually going on into science and engineering. And so this is an unbelievable thing, and that's what it's all about. So now you know what workforce math is about. If you'll need to study this probably in more detail, or have some of your people look it over to say what they think of it. But this is the bottom line of what it is. Now the question is, how do you get this? How can you get it for your employees if you're an employer, or how can you get it for if an organization and you're trying to prepare people for the workforce to get them a job? How can you do it? What's the deal? Well, here's how this works. Let me go back to my PDFs here. Here is what the product is. This is a PDF that you can get, and this will be on our website. What this is you get, I'm going to tell you about our on-site program to start with. This is an on-site program that normally is about 2 weeks in duration. It takes most students anywhere from 40 to 80 hours. I said 60 to 80 to complete it on site. You can always spend a lot of time reviewing and practicing, so you never run out of things to do. There's always things to do. But some students will go through it quicker than others. It's a rare student that can't complete it in 80 hours. But if you have a student that doesn't complete it within this 2 week period, but maybe they get sick or something, they miss a few days, well, then they can continue it online indefinitely until they finally complete it. Because ultimately what's going to happen is, here's what it includes. First of all, it includes the 76 lessons that I just told you about. And every one, as I said, is delivered online with videos, pre-tests and post-tests. We keep track of all this, by the way, in a learning management system. Every student, this is all delivered out of a learning management system. And so we know exactly where every student is, and you'll know exactly where every student is by following their in the learning management system. It comes with printed notes and exercises we supply the student. There's no book involved. There's no book that does this. There's absolutely no book today that does what I'm talking about. If there is one, I've never found it. Of course, we give them a calculator to use, and they can keep the calculator, needless to say. Now, we deliver this on what's called a supercomputer workstation, and I'll tell you about that a little bit more in a minute. But when the program is over, the student gets to keep the supercomputer, and as you'll learn in a minute, that allows them to go home then and continue working with all of this stuff. There will be a proctor certification test, because after all, an employer wants to know, did the student really go through this, or did they just cheat? So it's a proctored test so that the employer can know, yes, this student really understands this. And of course, we give them a certificate then once they've passed the test. Now, on site, we have an in-person coach. Now, this is not a math teacher. This is a coach to help them use the system, work with each other. Sometimes the coach will know some math, and sometimes they'll do things together. But but believe me, we're not talking about now a classroom situation. The students are learning on their own. There will be a student forum available to them where they can come and ask questions later. And of course, if they really need it, in rare occasions, they need some personalized tutoring, and we can give them that. So this is what the program includes. And we can do this on site anywhere, because these workstations, you can just set them up anywhere on a desk. You just need to plug them into a power supply. And so we can do this in a hotel room, in a motel, conference room. We can do it anywhere. We have locations in Bloomington and Terre Haute already identified if we wanted to do it there. But we could do this in Fort Wayne or Valparaiso or Evansville or anywhere else. It doesn't matter where. Now, I will just point out that this price here, $19.95, is intended to cover all the costs involved in this. Now, this will also include some sales and marketing costs if that's necessary. So if we're working with an organization to do this, and they're going to do the sales and the marketing, then some of this $19.95 will go to that organization. This includes the cost of the on-site costs and the coach and all that. Well, if an organization can provide that, again, that'll come out of this, and so on and so forth. As a matter of fact, as you will learn on the website, if one student wanted to take this on their own, just online with no coach, but they would have the forum, then they can do that for like a few $100s. And so the cost actually is including all those. Now, suppose we do this strictly online. It's not on site now. Well, then we don't have all the expenses of the on site, and so that would drop the price down. We're guesstimating $500 at least. And again, it's the same program, though. Identical program. It's just that the students now are not in a room together. They're just doing it from their own, wherever they're from. It can be their home. It can be, just wherever it could be. It could be in the library. They could be on the library taking it. Once again, we probably would recommend that we supply them a supercomputer to use. It is possible to take this with something like a Chromebook, but this is really better for lots of reasons that I'll tell you about in just a moment. So that's what the program is. Does that make sense, Debbie?
It does. Thank you.
Now, we have we deliver this when we do it on site in modules. We break the 76 lessons into 10 modules. And we just do that so that we give the student usually the printed notes module by module. Because when it's all said and done, it's a very thick notebook. And we don't want to intimidate students. When they start off, we don't want to give them a notebook with 400 pages in it. They go, oh my golly, oh, well. So we give it to them in modules. And once they get going, they get over any fear they had, any trepidation. Most students come into this, by the way, with a lot of fear. Most students are afraid of math. They've had a bad experience with math. That's very, very common, and for good reasons. Not their fault. It's not their fault. It's not really even the teacher's fault. It's just the way the current math system is taught in our high schools, and even the teachers in high schools are victims of it. I talk about that in my book. So anyway, this is the certification program. So if you are a company and you want to train a lot of your existing workers, you need to contact us and we need to talk about it. It won't cost this much per person if you're supplying a lot of these resources. And we'll negotiate that. It depends on what you can supply. If you are an organization and you're trying to prepare workers for the workforce, and today there's a lot of organizations in different states doing this because they know there's a lot of unemployed people today that would like to take a job, and there's lots of companies that have openings and they can't match them up. I'm telling you, if you put a person through this program, I can't believe you won't find lots of employers that want to hire that person. They're going to say, look, if this person knows this math, my golly, they can learn anything. And so they can learn all of our proprietary stuff, how to use our machines, and they can learn. And if they need to know hydraulics, it'll be easy to put them in a little hydraulics course. They can go through that, or pneumatics, or electrical systems, or whatever it might be. So this is a fantastic way to get people, and these people could be high school graduates. That's fine. Most high school graduates don't know this math, by the way, especially the ones that aren't going off into engineering and science. I'll tell you this, a lot of engineering and science graduates don't even know this, but that's neither here nor there. We're talking about people that are going to go into the workforce that want to, they're not going into college, they're not going to science and engineering. They want to go right into the workforce or the military. The military, same thing. And so you can, so if you're doing this, and if you can supply some of the resources, you supply the on-site, maybe you can provide a coach. Lots of people can be coaches. You don't have to, you're not a math teacher to be a coach. And I'm the teacher. So anyway, you want to contact us and we want to talk about it, but I've just given you an idea of what the cost might be when you include all the different things that have to go into it. So that's what this is about. Debbie, do you have any questions?
So there's no minimum student count?
No, not really.
Okay.
In fact, if you go to our website here, a single student can buy this program without, just do it on their own. Now, it doesn't include the supercomputer, but you go down and look at it, and a single student that goes and buys it, as I recall, for the advanced program, it's like $400. If they just want to do the intermediate program, which doesn't include some of the advanced topics, then it's a little bit less. But sure, we're very flexible. Our mission in life, as you know, Debbie, is to help people, men and women, that want to make a better life for themselves, and they want a good job, career opportunity. And yes, they have to understand English. They have to be literate. because they have to read directions and all. They don't need to read Shakespeare, but they got to be literate. Well, mathematics is like a universal second language. There's all sorts of things that you can communicate with math and all sorts of things you can do with math that you can't do with a natural language. So it's like a second language. And so that's what it's all about. You there, Debbie?
Yeah, thank you. It makes sense.
I heard a sound and I didn't know what that was. Okay. Well, anyway, we invite you to contact us. You can go to Workforce Math and contact us, or you can just, if you want to, just contact me directly. My contact information is on my website, craighaines.com, and at the bottom you got my phone number and you got my email. Craig@haines.com is my email, and there's my phone number, 812-332-8179. We're based in Bloomington, Indiana, and I'm a Hoosier. I'm born and bred Hoosier. As you know, I was raised in Greencastle. I did my PhD at IU. I taught at Rose-Hulman and Indiana State and DePaul and Greencastle High School. So I'm a Hoosier. And although I did do my undergraduate work in Ohio, and I taught a year in Ohio at high school level. So anyway, contact me and we'll talk about it further, whatever your situation is, your organization or your company, and we'll see what we can do for you, okay?
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Deb. Thanks, everybody. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.